Hi everyone and welcome to another live Q&A. My name is Cedric Marin and I'm an immigration lawyer at Holf Immigration Law, and today I'm going to take all your questions live about how to immigrate to Canada. So I just provide general information and I try to pick the most helpful questions to help a lot of people. I love starting by where you're joining me from and who you're going for in the World Cup. It's Group of 16 is ongoing. Lots of things happening. I see Ahmed's joining me. Says, hi, Ahmed. Nice to see you. We have Pavneet says, good morning. Hi, Cedric. Good morning, guys. And for those of you who are just joining me, I actually didn't, we do the live Q&As on Tuesdays. I do them on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8:30 a.m. Toronto time. But I actually forgot to post this one on the channel, which means that we're probably going to have a little bit of a smaller group today, which means that I can answer more of your questions, which is obviously my pleasure to do so. I also got some very interesting ATIPs that have come back from IRCC. So access to information requests. You can, if you're a Canadian or if you're inside Canada, you're allowed to make an access to information requests. And these requests, you're allowed to ask for information and whatnot. So let's go take a look here. What was the most interesting one was actually one to do with the acceptance of study permits for all the different DLIs. So I'm going to go ahead here and share my screen. We have Reed says, hi, good morning. We have Ahmed. All right, Ahmed, ask me your question and start posting the questions. But I do want to talk about this just very briefly. So here is this going to show? Yeah, there we go. So listen, it's really hard to see, but let's see if we can zoom in here. Yeah, we can. So this is an access to information request where we requested all of the DLI acceptance. So this means that these are the colleges and universities inside Canada that are recognized by IRCC, which are able to come to Canada to study, in some cases, get a postgraduate work permit. So we actually take a look here at all this information. This is public government information that Canadians can have access to. And what we're interested in is if you look here at the far right, we can see the different numbers over in 2016 and 2017. And we can actually keep going down and we can find the most recent numbers for 2020 and 2021. Should maybe bookmark this before. Well, there we go, guys. It's as live as it gets. Here are the numbers. So here are the different schools. And we can actually, oh, wow. So this is going to be hard to look at, but here are the different schools and here are the acceptance rate and whatnot. So if you're wondering, how do I come to Canada? What is the acceptance rate for Canada? And specifically, what about the specific college or CEGEP or university, right? You can look at this chart and we can go down and look at the actual approval rate. So some schools have 90 or 92% approval rates, while some schools have lower at about 40, 50%. So this is an interesting tool. You can actually also see the total number of applications. So right, some schools get a lot of applications compared to others. So we're going to write a blog about this. This, I think, has been circulated with other immigration lawyers as well. We just got our hands on it, but it was very interesting to see the approval rates for the different colleges inside Canada and to see how they compare to each other. So very, very interesting stuff. As you guys also know, tomorrow, we always love talking about Express Entry. Express Entry is how you get your permanent residence. And tomorrow we do expect another Express Entry draw. And I think for the first time, we're going to have a non-program specific draw. Oops, just got to share my screen here. We're going to have a non-program specific draw for Express Entry that's going to be lower than 490. So that is really, really good news. So if you've been waiting on the sidelines and waiting to get your permanent residence and waiting for this score to go down, this is very welcomed news. If you keep scrolling down, or actually if we click on the specific draw, we can actually see that the last draw, so 2 weeks ago, the last draw, where's this information that I want? There we go, rounds of invitation. Yeah, so we can actually see here the last draw, the distribution of who's inside the pool. So for those of you who are brand new to Express Entry, here's how it works. You put in your education, you put in your schooling, your amount of work experience, the languages you speak, you do language tests, and you get a score. And if your score is high enough, right? If your score is high enough in here, they're going to go ahead and they're going to issue you an invitation to apply to come to Canada with permanent residence. It's a fantastic program. We've talked in detail about points and whatnot, but this is just a very, very short overview. Feel free to keep asking me your questions. I'm going to get to them right at them. So keep posting your questions. We're going to get at them. I just like to give an overview. This is going to happen tomorrow. So we do expect it every 2 weeks. We expect one to happen on December 6th. And for those of you who your CRS score is not high enough, what you need to understand is that we are expected this winter to have non-specific CRS that have no program specified draws that are not to do with CRS points, but with your occupation. So depending on what you work, where you want to go settle, Canada is going to roll out a program where they can say, okay, we want all the engineers who want to go to Manitoba to go, and they're going to issue ITAs, even if your CRS score is 400 or even possibly 450. Now we're waiting for the details, and I guarantee you that we're going to be live on the announcements, and we're going to talk in detail about this, about the non-express entry draws. But if you're waiting on the sidelines, I would definitely recommend to have an express entry profile, get your ECA, get your language score. All right, Ahmed, you have a question, guys. We have about an hour set aside, so ask me as many questions. And again, just general legal information, right? I don't have your applications in front of me. I don't have all of the specific details, and this is just a short question. And the idea is to help everyone out as much as possible. All right, so Ahmed says, I'm from Tunisia. Fantastic. I actually worked in Tunisia in a small town called Sango, which was near Zarzis. I worked for the UNHCR in 2020, and I do love Tunisia. All right, I'm from Tunisia. My wife is Ukrainian. She's with me in Tunisia because Ukraine is not safe for Canada. I'd like to move for Canada under the QED visa. Can we do that from Tunisia? Yeah, absolutely, Ahmed. So that program is available. It doesn't matter if you're it doesn't matter where you are outside of Ukraine. If you are outside Ukraine, she is eligible to apply for the QED visa, the CUAET visa, and you would be a dependent. You would be the spouse to the Ukrainian, and you could come to Canada with her and benefit from that emergency travel authorization. You can apply for a 3-year work permit, so it allows you to stay in Canada for up to 3 years and work. Very advantageous program that Canada created. And then the idea, Ahmed, is we're waiting. Like some programs have some Ukrainian specific programs, but right now, don't forget you can always apply to express entry. So come to Canada, you work for 3 years, and then you get your sorry, for the Canadian experience class, you're going to want to get your minimum requirements of work. So get 1 year of Canadian work experience, and then Ahmed, what you're going to want to do is what's really important about the 1 year work experience is that it's going to give you a lot of bonus points. You're going to get 40 points for having that Canadian work experience, but you're also going to get all these transferability points. So I'm going through the links a bit quickly because it's a little bit repetitive. I do talk about this a lot. We do a lot of express entry, but you're going to want to line yourself up to work in skilled work. Canadian work experience, I think section 15. 15. Yeah, 15. There we go. So you get 40 points for the 1 year Canadian work experience. We get additional points if you speak French, Ahmad. So come to Canada with her as the principal applicant with this special authorization visa for Ukrainians. Once you're inside Canada, you can then be the principal applicant for the PR application. Once you get your 1 year of Canadian skilled experience, a lot of requirements here at the bottom. Encourage you to book a consult if you want to speak more about this, but definitely a program that's available for you both, even if you're located inside Tunisia. Obviously, you guys both need passports and whatnot to travel. There's also a lot more requirements. Again, just general information. We have Okuruk Moses says, hello and hello to you. And then we have Leb says, I wish to book a consultation with Whole Immigration Law. I wish to ask, with due respect, are you all associates at your firm? RCIC license? This is just a query, not a question on the competence. No problem. None of us are RCIC licensed. Now the question, now you're probably like, what are these guys doing? So we're not immigration consultants. So we're not licensed through the consultants. We are immigration lawyers. So we're all licensed through law societies inside Canada. So in immigration law, to provide advice for consideration, so advice for money, you need to do one of two things. Either be a lawyer, right? So I went to law school. I completed 4 years of law school. I completed then a master's of law, which is another 2 years. And then I wrote bar exams. I became a lawyer. I worked for a judge. I worked for the government of Canada. And then finally, now I've decided to work in private practice. So you can actually take a look here if you, I'm not a consultant, so I'm not licensed through the consultants. I'm licensed through the Law Society of Ontario. And you can actually take a look here. Here's the Law Society of Ontario. Loading a little bit slowly, but you can find here, you can make complaints and whatnot. You can also look for a lawyer. And here, we're actually going to look myself up. So I'm licensed by the Law Society of Ontario, Chanel as well. Mark and Alicia are both in Alberta, and so they're licensed by the Law Society of Alberta. I'm in Ontario. Let's take a look here. And so there we go. So Cedric Marin, licensed type lawyer, status in private practice. I'm based in Ottawa, but I do telework abroad. And here you can see here that my class of license is a lawyer. And this is an office that I have inside Ottawa, but as I mentioned, I do telework. So there we go. This confirms that I am licensed to provide legal advice. We also fill out use of rep forms when required, or these letters called advice of consideration, where we disclose that you work with us. So fully licensed, fully insured, all our associates at our firm. And you can do the same thing. So if you want to look at Chanel, so if you want to actually find my colleague Chanel, let's find her here. So we can actually go Chanel, and it was the same thing. This is by address. We want to do by name. Rosenbaum. I think that's how we write her last name. There she is. So you can also see that she's in private practice as well. She's also licensed and based in Toronto. We do the same thing. And I encourage you, if you want, do the Law Society of Alberta for Mark and Alicia. You're going to see that we're licensed lawyers. All right. Pavneet says, do we need 2 years apprenticeship? And sorry, I just want to mention before we move on, it's pretty rare that you have immigration lawyers doing live Q&As. We focus on individual immigration. So we want to help out as many people as possible. And we focus not on, we do a lot of business work and whatnot, but we also do a lot of individual immigration, express entry, work permits, judicial reviews, refusals and whatnot. That's what we do. But it's really rare that you're going to find immigration lawyers doing live Q&As, and we're here to provide, really good legal information. All right, Pavneet, do we need 2 years of apprenticeship for NOC codes 72410? Automotive technicians for CEC? Excellent question. So let's actually go ahead over and find this new NOC code. So it switched over to tier recently, and let's go take a look at that. All right, so we're going to search here by NOC code. We're going to change it to the most recent one. And sorry, your question was 72410. And so it's an interesting question. So talking about apprenticeships and whatnot, we're going to find here, so here it talks about the employment requirements, and then it talks about a trade certification. So the trade certification question is a whole other issue, whether or not you need to have the trade certification to immigrate to Canada. But as we talk about the main duties and over here we have the lead statement. This is going to be very important. So you must meet the lead statement. You must meet all the requirements here, and then you must meet 75% of one of these technician categories. The employment requirements, so here we talk about education usually is not considered for express entry, right? We only care about lead statement and the NOC. This being said, if you do have a trade certification, right, it might be compulsory inside of your province, and if so, for express entry, you might need to show that you're legally, gainfully employed inside Canada, that you acquired this experience as a technician with a trade. But it gets a little bit complicated, Pavneet, but I would definitely encourage you to reach out if you'd like to speak more about that. Athena Mary says, hi, Cedric. Thanks a lot for enlightening us. Grateful. Once Bill C, I forget. Oh, yeah. I also forget what it is. But there's a C something there, C16 or 14, I forget. But comes into existence, CRS-based draws will be completely stopped. Excellent question. So at the beginning of the live Q&A, I was saying, okay, we're going to have some employer-specific, like occupation-specific draws. The answer to the question, Anitha, is that we're actually waiting to see what the minister is going to do. So that bill gave the minister the authority to make draws based on other requirements other than CRS score. So we're waiting to see how it's going to be implemented. And we do expect it to maybe going to be in January, February, sometime this winter for this to take place, because there's lots of labor shortages inside Canada. All right, Shira Khan says, hi, Cedric. Thanks for your predictions for the cutoff tomorrow. Oh, what is your prediction for the cutoff tomorrow? Thank you for doing this. Listen, guys, my pleasure. So we talked about it briefly at the start of live Q&A, but let's talk about serious predictions. So my prediction, right, we're seeing it go down by about 3 or 4, right? 6 before, so 6. Then we got the 4s, and now we're seeing 3. And it's going to be interesting because we're seeing more and more applicants now creating express entry profiles. People know that their scores are around 480 or 490, but they didn't make a profile during COVID because they knew that they were not going to get an express entry draw, especially if they're outside Canada, right? So we see increasingly amount of people contacting us. And part of the reason why I'm so busy and I haven't added all these nice graphics to the live Q&A is because I just simply don't have time. Either I prioritize existing clients, right, and work with them to give good services, or B, I am, doing the live Q&A. So I haven't had the time to update that. We're extremely busy and we're getting a lot of people contacting us about this. So we know more and more people are applying, right? We know that this draw is going down by about 3 or 4. So my prediction is that it's going to go down by 3. So I think we're going to be in 488 for tomorrow. And as I mentioned earlier, we can kind of look to see the current pool size. So this is before the draw, before the last draw, right? These are only people who were over 491. But here at the 480, we can see that there's at least another 10,000. So I think we're going to finish the year in the 480s, and I think it's going to be 488. But as I mentioned, if you've been waiting on the sidelines and you've been waiting to apply, now is your time to do so. What's the scope of welders in Canada in upcoming time? What's the scope of welders in Canada in upcoming time? I don't think feel free to ask your question again. I don't fully understand. I'm sorry. I don't want to make assumptions and guess. I want to be the most helpful. So just please feel free to re-ask your question. Ahmed says, thank you very much, sir. My pleasure, Ahmed. If you go over to our website, Holth Immigration Law, this is how it looks like, holthlaw.com, HOLTHE law.com. There's going to be a link in the description. You can go over here to speak with a lawyer. You can scroll down here at the bottom and we have my colleague Alicia, we have Chanel, and we have myself. I tend to focus on express entry. I also focus on rejected applications. So going to federal court and arguing that the IRCC made a mistake in refusing applications is my focus. And Ahmed, I've also done some travel authorizations for people exactly in your situation, whether they're in they're close to Ukraine or far, like in Tunisia. Do reach out. All right, Ajay Kumar says, my medicals was completed February 2022. Biometrics are done on October 11th, 2022. Will I get my visa before medical expire? Will my visa affect my medicals? It's possible that they ask you to redo the medicals. It's possible, but if you're inside Canada, there is an exemption right now with temporary public policy. If you're inside Canada, but you've previously applied for a PR TR program, we can actually, let's just pull it up here because it might apply to a lot of people. Public policy exemption medical. And there we go. So this was announced this summer, and it's called the Temporary Public Policy to Exempt Certain Foreign Nationals from the Immigration Medical Examination Requirements. So take a look at this page. And then what we're interested in is this the one? Yeah, this is the one. This is the actual announcement by the order by the minister. So within the last 5 years before the date you applied, it has indicated a Canadian residence. So again, this only applies to people inside Canada, right? So if you're inside Canada, maybe it's going to apply to you. If not, yeah, it's really tough to say. I think generally they really try to get that visa process so you don't have to redo it. But if you made an application during COVID, you absolutely know that that people have been asked to do medicals once, twice, or even 3 times, unfortunately, because it's taking such a long time. All right, Matisha says, I'm a skilled worker in Canada. My son is here with me. He's on visitor visa as family part. What kind of visa does he need? He can go on to college. Yeah, so if he's on so right now, minor children are usually going to be on visitor visas or visitor records inside Canada. Some cases, school boards can ask for study permits and whatnot, or provinces might if they want additional services and whatnot. But generally speaking, and again, I just give legal information, children are going to be on visitor visa. Now, That is for minors, right? For minor children who are accompanying someone that's on a work permit. Now, interesting question. And we can go take a look here at the requirements, but he's going to need at some point to apply for a study permit if to attend a designated learning institute, right? And if we go over here at the Immigration and Refugee Protection Regulations, we can take a look here. So who can study without a permit? So here are the situations of people who can study without a permit. And here we're talking about studying. We're talking about, attending a designated learning institute like a college or a university. So do they meet one of these requirements? If they're going to university inside Canada, probably not. And so let's take a look here at the general rules applying for students. So the good news is that they can apply within Canada. So a foreign national may apply for study permit when entering Canada, then after entering Canada. So they can apply after entering Canada if they hold one of the following right now. So temporary resident who is studying, right, at the primary or secondary level. So that is the case of your son. They can apply for the study permit. Obviously something that we'd love to do and help you and make sure it's properly done. And keep in mind that there's like a delay. So if you're looking for like the January term, it's probably too late. But if you're looking to get a visitor visa, a study permit for the September term, right now is a great time to start thinking about what documents you're going to need and how to properly prepare it to make that study permit application. So you can apply from within Canada, which is great, but he's going to need a study permit if we saw earlier, if there's one of those situations applied to him, and in particular going to the designated learning institute. All right, Vinesh says, oh no, my camera is blurry. I don't know why it does that. But I bought a brand new camera, and every time I speak now, it is blurry. Let's try to see here if I can unblurry it. All right, there we go. All right, Vinesh says, I have 1 year Canadian experience, but I went home to my home country and worked remotely outside Canada for around 5 months. Am I eligible under the CC Express Entry? Oof, excellent question, Vishesh. It's listen, let's go take a look here at the short answer to the question is probably going to be no, because for Canadian employer, teleworking, it was during COVID. I really don't like this, but let's go take a look here. Generally speaking, you're going to have to be, the Canadian work experience has to be inside Canada. So even if you did not have a work remotely, it has to be for a Canadian company, it has to be inside Canada for a Canadian company, right? So if you were to telework, let's say abroad for a Canadian company, it's not going to count for the Canadian experience class. In your case though, I'd be curious to know whether or not you had a postgraduate work permit or a work status inside Canada. But 5 months is quite a bit of an excess of time. Let's go take a look here. This is the ministerial instructions. These are the regulations essentially that talk about how the immigration officers are going to evaluate your Canadian work experience. And one of the requirements must be that the period of employment during which the foreign national was engaged, here's full-time study, it's not self-employment or unauthorized work. The foreign national must have had temporary resident status during their period of work and any period of full-time study or training. So this is interesting, Vishesh. So this is essentially telling us right now that you need to have a work permit if you're going to work for a Canadian company, but it doesn't necessarily say that you have to be inside Canada, right? Let's go take a look here again. The points that are assigned to the Canadian work experience: foreign national who has no accompanying spouse, 1 year of Canadian work experience, maximum points. Is work experience that is acquired in one or more occupation. Is it full-time or part-time with one or more employers, right? So this, you have to be for an employer. Is acquired within the 10-year period preceding the day on which employment points are assigned to the foreign national. Is remunerated by the payment of wages or commission. And then here we get a little bit more technical about periods of self-employment and work in excess. So Vishesh, to answer your question, it's a really good question. Generally, as I mentioned, people who telework abroad don't have a temporary resident status. My question for you would be, do you have a temporary resident status? Do you have a work permit when you were teleworking? But generally speaking, the work experience has to be inside Canada. And without more details about your situation, it's hard to say whether or not you would be eligible for it. I think it comes with risk. I think it's going to be one of those situations where if you do want to submit the application, it definitely does come with risk that you were not actually working in Canada during that time. But the ministerial instructions don't necessarily say that it has to be physically inside Canada. It just says that you need a temporary resident status. But I'd say generally, we definitely don't recommend this approach. But again, I don't know the specifics of your case, but very, very tough question to just answer on the fly without much more information. Sorry about that. We have Pevney says, any ideas how many more ITs left till B19 implementation? Will it come down to 460? So I don't think it's going to come down to 460 before the implementation. And the reason why is because there's a certain amount of ITAs that they allow every time. So we have at the end, we have the there is the immigration level plans where every year they try to get a certain amount of permanent resident applications processed, and based on that we can forecast how many invitations are going to be issued. But I think we're going to see the next one December 7th, and then we might see another one on December 21st. It's still going to be in the 480s, so I don't think it's going to come down to 460. Now before the end of the year, before C19, so C19 has already been passed, right? The minister has these powers. When are they going to implement it? What's going to happen? We don't know. And this is why I strongly encourage you to make an express entry profile, because you could be lucky and be swooped in, even if your CRS score is in the 460s. So definitely a tough predictions, right? We can't predict the future, but I don't think it's going to come down to 460 before C19. And I nevertheless encourage you to have a profile so that when it's announced, if your profile is there and if there's a surprise ITA, they take 10,000 people, or they announce that, they're going to take all engineers and tech professionals, that would be fantastic for you, and you might be able to get to your PR. All right, Akash says, hi Cedric, I applied under the essential worker stream under tier to PR last year, got a biometric request 4 months back, no updates after that. Is this a normal time frame? Thank you, Akash. No exaggeration, I just came off a call with a client speaking about delays for the TR to PR, and we're starting to see some refusals. So we're starting to see refusals come in. We're starting to see additional document requests. So we know that they are processing these applications, right? We know that they're working actively on these applications. This being said, it's really tough to know what is the normal processing time. There was a temporary public policy that was just announced, right? We're still, some people are getting some acceptance, but we still don't really know how long it's taking. But I think that it's, generally speaking, no news is good news. If it's pending, that is good stuff. So it is, to answer your question, yeah, it's really a normal time frame. A lot of applications are still pending. What are the chances of a score touching 480 before Bill C19? I think that's more realistic to go to C19, but keep in mind, guys, that they might continue with the CRS points, right? There doesn't mean that they're going to stop the CRS points. We are waiting for more specific details. So I think 480 is more realistic for sure. AJ says it's a work permit. We have Amongst Us says, hello, the gift deed. Do we have to apostille or legalize the document, or notarial is fine? I think only notarialization is fine. I think even sometimes we just have letters from people for gift deeds, right? With IDs and whatnot to show that this person wrote this letter. There's no real requirement that it's, legalized or notarialized or filed in court, whatever the court proceedings may be inside your country. But what has to be clear about the gift deed is that when someone's giving you money, whether it's family or friends, that for the settlement of funds for express entry, that it's not a gift, right? And so if your balance is $5,000, someone gives you 20 grand, if you have to pay it back, you're not going to meet the proof of funds. But if your parents are paying you, right? They're not paying you, but they're giving you money for your success, then it must be a gift. And I strongly recommend that if it brings you from under, right, the minimum amount to over the amount that you need, that you definitely explain that it's a gift deed and get the proper documentation. But listen, there's a letter should be fine. If you want to notarize it, that works as well. All right. And thank you guys. I'm trying to go through as many questions as possible. Kind of take them in a first come, first serve. So here we go. Let's get right at it. So Shoria says, my work permit is expiring December 30th. I have applied for the work permit authorization under the 18-month work policy. I'm traveling to Dubai on December 16th. I entered Canada on December 29th. I have valid TRV till December 30th. Wow, interesting question. So, listen, we don't give legal advice, right? Like, I don't know the passport length of your passport. Is your passport valid, right? The I know that the interim work authorization, and you may know this as well, but does not allow you to come back to work inside Canada. The visa being valid one day before you land. What happens if your plane's late? What happens if you miss your plane, right? You come to Canada a day later on the same date. Or what happens if you get scrutinized at the border, right? And Sharia, the question I'd be asking you is, so imagine that I'm a border officer and you come back to Canada. I'd say, okay, well, Sharia, what's your temporary intention to enter Canada today, right? What ties do you have in your home country? Do you have money to sustain yourself, right? They're going to be looking at all these factors again on your admissibility to Canada once again. And you're going to say, oh, I'll have a pending application for post-grad. And they're going to say, well, it doesn't allow you to come back in. So why are you coming in today? Oh, well, I have a rent here and I'm looking for a job. And oh, by the way, I got this PR application I'm working on. So it's really not something, it comes with a tremendous amount of risk to leave Canada a day before your TRV is going to expire with interim work authorization that clearly says it cannot be used to enter back to Canada. You're on a post-grad work permit, so you've obviously lived in Canada for at least a few years now. And now we're going to be going through all the hoops again of your temporary intention and what you're doing inside Canada. It looks messy and I wouldn't recommend it. Again, I don't know more about your specific situation, but this is, I hope this was helpful as legal information. Obviously, disregard what I said and you do you. But that's my 2 seconds of thoughts. I definitely would not recommend it. But again, I don't know your personal situation. All right. Va N says, what is your opinion on changing from unaccompanying to accompanying after PR before landing? It's possible you can do it. You're gonna have to update some forms. Whether or not a family member is unaccompanying or accompanying, they do have to go through medical examination, which includes medicals, but also includes a background check and whatnot. So, you can do it. What's interesting about PR is that if you were changing for like a study permit or a work permit, we're dealing with temporary intent, right? And sometimes people say, listen, I'm going to come to Canada to work for 5 years. And look, my spouse and children are not accompanying. They're going to stay inside my country. And so in those cases, you're like, all right, there's a good chance that this person is going to go back to be with his wife or husband and their kids, right? But, so if you were to change that during a temporary resident application, right, the visa officer might say, oh, wait a second, like, are they actually going to go back to their country of residence? PR application, you don't necessarily have that big of a risk because it's permanent, right? But it is possible to change it from unaccompanying to accompanying. But again, I don't know your specific situation. Don't know your specific situation. Dilpreep says, I'm working as a welder in India. How can I immigrate to Canada with 1 year experience? So you might actually be looking, we don't talk a lot about this class here, but you might be looking at the Federal Skilled Trade Program. You need to have a minimum amount of here you need 2 years of work experience within the last 5 years. So you're going to need more work experience, but this is specific for skilled work. So we're specifically talking about people who are coming to Canada with one of these trades here, which could be, for example, milling, manufacturing, processing, aircrafts, and whatnot. You may be able to meet one of these requirements, or you might actually be able to meet the Federal Skilled Worker Program. I'm not going to go into detail here, but I just encourage you to look at this eligibility to see if you meet this experience. Oops, I didn't put the question up. Well, there it is. All right, Pashnish says, hey, Cedric, since Express Entry requires 3 years of Express Entry to get max points, all right, after eligibility is met, can I provide more than that for PNP if I'm declaring it in ITA in Express Entry post ITA in personal history? Okay, let me just read that one more time. Since Express Entry requires 3 years of Express Entry for max points, after eligibility is met, can I provide more than that for PNP if I'm declaring it in Express Entry profile post ITA? Can I provide for PNP if I'm declaring it Express Entry post personal history? Okay, I don't think I fully understand your question, but I do understand parts of it. So so in work history, when you create your profile, you can list, if you want, you can put, all your jobs in the last 5-10 years, right? However, as you mentioned, we're only looking for eligibility. So federal skilled worker is 1 year, and for points, we're looking for the 3 years. So generally speaking, what people might do is they might put 5 years of work experience at different jobs. So if there's problems with one job or one reference letter, the other job is going to make up that other 2 or 3 years. That's a valid strategy, but generally speaking, we would recommend only to declare the work experience for points inside your profile. And then when you get your ITA in your personal history section, the question specifically asks you, what is your work experience for all of the last 10 years? And this is not for points. They just want to know, are you employed, unemployed, working? What are you doing? So you're more than welcome, if you want, for your PNP profile to put many work experiences in your work history section, if you have obviously reference letters and pay stubs, it's genuine and whatnot, right? So you could do that approach, but you're going to have a primary occupation. You can only have one primary occupation, and that's most likely what they're going to be looking for eligibility, most likely what they're going to be looking for PNP as well. So but that answers your question, but profile stage, only declare the work experience for eligibility and points. Primary occupation is for eligibility. Primary occupation is for PNP, most likely, how they search for the jobs. And then when you get your ITA in personal history section, you declare all the unemployment, employment, the jobs as a student, the job you worked for a month and quit because you didn't like, the job you worked, but doesn't give you any points. That's where you're going to declare it. All right, Purple Queen says re-AIP can't take 1 year. So Atlantic Immigration Program can't take a 1 year certificate program and take another 1 year certificate program from the same college, or additional 1 year certificate program from another Atlantic province. So interesting. So I think you're asking me if you qualify for the Atlantic Immigration Program as a graduate, like in the Atlantic province. Let's go take a look here. So we have two different classes. Either you're going to be considered a foreign worker, or going to be considered international graduate. You do not need to meet the work experience requirement if you're an international graduate. So at least 2 years of studies. Listen, Purple Queen, this program, they're very responsive, and you can very responsive. Like the provinces are very responsive. So if you have any issues with the provinces or whatnot, definitely reach out to them, and they can definitely enlighten you on this and whether or not at least 2 years of studies. And to be honest, I don't exactly know how they're going to be calculating this 2 years. It's going to be a 1 + 1 is going to count. It does count for postgraduate work permits. So I assume that it counts for the IP, but again, I'm assuming here what we'd have to take a look at in detail are going to be the, it's called operational manual for AIP. So the stuff you see on the website is usually going to be like public facing for people who are just curious. But if you want to read the really technical stuff, is going to be under operational instructions and guidelines. I cheated. I just Googled this for the AIP, but it brings you to this page here, which talks about specifics about your application. So what we want to know here is about temporary resident visa. No, we want to know about ability to become, so assessing the criteria. And then we want to take a look here at education. So assessing education, applicants with a Lockean honor before doesn't apply to us. We're going to be honor after the state. But here we're talking about education. So Canadian 1 year postgraduate educational credential, high school diploma. So only certain educational credentials are eligible for international graduates. International credentials is not eligible if it was obtained in a study or training where, okay, half the program is more distance learning, scholarship, okay, or as a second language, you studied French or English as a study language, right? They want you to study other things like arts, engineering, whatever, right? So there we have it. But it doesn't talk about your specific. It talks about qualifying job offers, and funds. So interesting question. I really try as best as I can in like 1 or 2 minutes to give you as much information. This could easily take at least another 20 minutes of research, if not longer. So I would encourage you to read this a little bit more in detail. You can reach out to IRCC. You can read out about, is there going to be education here? This is going to be the actual job, if you have a job offer. Yeah, I see this is just repeating what we already saw. Listen, I'm sorry that I can't answer your question about if the 1 + 1 is going to be okay, if a certificate program instead of the diploma program. I encourage you to reach out to make a web form, IRCC. I'd love to look into this in detail, search more, obviously, if we had more time. Pavneet says, what would be the minimum time required to learn French to increase your CRS scores, or the minimum scores required for additional up to 25 points? So Pavneet, I don't know how much time it's going to take you. For those of you who've already done it, feel free to comment in the comments below. Let me know how much time it took you, but I think it's going to be at least like 500 or 1,000 hours. But here are the points. Here are the ministerial instructions. So you need to have a CLB at least 5 or higher in all skill areas. So to get your 25 points, get an extra 50 points, it's going to be minimum 7 in every competence. So I think it's going to take a lot of studying, a lot of dedication, especially if you don't live in a French country. But Pavneet, it's definitely a way that people are getting their ITAs. Vikram says, hello, Cedric. Hi to you. AJ says, work permit is raised by the employer. GCK account is not shared with us. How do I check the status? Anyway, check it. So you can, my work permit is raised by so the employer can have their own, like the employer can have their own account, or the lawyers can have, as a representative, can have their own account. But you can link the application to your profile. So take it from their account, put it inside your account. But I would definitely, AJ, check with them to see whether, like, what the strategy is, what's going on. You can also email them for the status of your application. But if you just Google like link my application to my profile, you're able to like pull it. You have to answer some questions, right? Some specific questions like length of study program, date of birth and passport number and whatnot. But it's going to be able to pull it from the program and go from there. Meet, thank you for joining us again. Hi, so nice to hear you. Leb says, thank you so much for the answer. I appreciate. Just been burnt badly by unlicensed, unregulated immigration professionals in my home country twice. Hence the question. You're most welcome, Leb. And I've been actually thinking about making a video that shows all this information. But if you can go on the IRCIC website and you can search for consultants, right? You can also go on the Law Society websites and you can search for the lawyers by their names, by their license number, to see if they're licensed, they're insured, and they're in good practice, right? Sometimes when there's complaints, there's investigations, the licenses can be revoked, people can be suspended from practicing, right? So definitely before you hire anyone, definitely make sure that they are licensed and just confirm we're all licensed, all insured. And you can also just go on our website and just read. So licensed and insured. Now, just because someone is a consultant or a lawyer doesn't necessarily mean that they focus and have done your type of application. So the follow-up question and first question that I would ask in a consultation, and first question that you should maybe ask us, is how many of these applications have you done? And we've done a lot of express entry. We've done a lot of express entry. We've done a lot of applications for work, studies, including even businesses for LMIAs and work permits and whatnot. So we do have quite a bit of experience. Our reviews are on our Google page, so take a look and feel free to reach out if you do have more questions about our licenses and experience. All right, guys, just looking for the next question here. Again, trying to find the most helpful questions. Trying to find the most helpful questions to answer. This is an interesting one by Skywalker. So one of the big differences between the Canadian Experience class and the Federal Skilled Workers is the Canadian Experience class. So Canadian Experience cannot be obtained when you were working. So you cannot count any paid work that you did when you were a full-time student, does not count for the Canadian Experience class. And that's an important distinction. Is it on this page? It's not on this page, but is it on this page? A few different ways. It's definitely the ministerial instructions. It clearly says that I think we saw it earlier, any full-time, there we go. Self-employment and student work experience doesn't count. And Skywalker, to answer your question, one of the big differences, the federal skilled worker, is that you're allowed to be a student. You can be a student. There isn't this caveat that you can't be a student. So take a look here and see whether or not you have the minimum of 1 year experience. And yeah, so it could work if it was continuous. So it's got to be 1 year continuous. So no breaks in contracts. It must be paid, right? You must have paid work. It must be within the last 10 years. So if you're in class 12, hopefully it was within the last year. And then you need to make up, if it's part-time experience, you need to get this magic number of 1,560 hours. All right, jet lag. Toya says, I have open work permit. I'll apply single intent LMIA only to support PR. Should I switch to closed work permit? Can I work with open work permit? So you can continue working with your, so what type of open work permit is it? Is it like a francophone mobilité? Oh no, that's still closed work permit. Is it like a postgrad work permit that's going to be an open work permit? Is it through a, is it going to be expiring soon? Is it through a free trade agreement? Generally speaking, right, if you're going to be applying for the LMIA to support the PR, you don't necessarily need to switch to a closed work permit. But for the PR purposes, right, you might need a job offer. You might need to review and get a new LMIA if your work permit is going to expire. So no obligation to switch to a closed work permit if you're going to be obtaining it for PR, but you do have the intention to fulfill the LMIA. So the LMIA might say, they need to work there, and that's going to be a condition that you need to actually fulfill, right? You can't submit an LMIA and never have the intention to work that job. That's not going to have a good intent at the time that you filed it. All right, we have Mary says, is there any plan for 2023 temporary foreign workers to be permanent? I applied to CC program through Express Entry file, but I'm still in line to be invited for about 9 months. Yeah, so Mary, the score is really high right now, as we talked about, and we're really hoping that it gets back down to the 480s, the 490s. But realistically speaking, I think we're going to still see in the 480s by the end of the year, and hopefully the score goes down. Canada is going to be accepting more and more individuals. Immigration levels plans announced for next year. So more and more ITAs, more and more individuals being invited. So I really hope that you get invited as well. But we're expecting a lot of small changes to temporary resident programs to transition to permanent residents. But I don't think we're going to be seeing like a TR to PR like we saw during COVID. That was quite exceptional. Obviously, anything is possible. Just once again, for people just joining us, head over to our website, Whole Earth Immigration Law. At the top right, speak with lawyer. But what I want to talk about are our blogs. These blogs are all written by lawyers, all written by us, and we talk about all these different issues. So how to bring your parents and grandparents to Canada, what you need to do now to prepare for the January intake. So Chanel focuses a lot on study permits, and she wrote this very helpful blog saying exactly how to, the dates to be aware of, how the process works to be able to apply for a study permit. Also check up on our website, the top 5 tier takeaways. So change from the NOC to the tier, and a lot of this content, it's very specific. Like if you're just starting off and you have no idea what tier is, what a NOC code is, we'd love to go on our website, learn more about the resources, about how to immigrate, learn more about the various express entry programs, how to come to Canada to work, right? To visit family and whatnot. But, if you know the basics, you might need to get to that next level for your own application. So learn about the 5 tier takeaways, the changes that took place during tier, what happened during tier, and how it affects your applications, right? If you have a pending express entry application, you needed to update it, right? With the new tier code, not NOC, but now tier. So these are really written by immigration lawyers for individuals who really want to help themselves and get to the next level. Here's a immigration levels plan. So we did a whole blog about the amount of people that are going to be accepted in the coming years. And as we mentioned, we do see these increases in numbers going all the way up. Not phone numbers, but actual numbers. I do focus on rejected applications. So if you have a refusal, really important to reach out within 60 days for outside Canada or 15 days if you're inside Canada. But I wrote a whole blog here explaining the whole process about how to apply for judicial reviews. You can also take a look here about reconsideration requests and mandamus. So a lot of content. If you're starting off, if you're already a pro in immigration, if you're already doing really if you're doing your own application. This time, guys, this is going to conclude our live Q&A. Thank you so much for joining me Tuesdays and Thursdays, 8:30 a.m. And I hope to see you very soon, either in a consult or on the next live Q&A. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful